Even after decades of research and countless scientific discoveries, much of our brain remains a mystery. Scientists continue to research questions even as seemingly simple as why do we sleep? Unfortunately, we can't fully answer that quite yet, but there's one thing we do know. Our nighttime rest seems to be connected to how we learn. Sleep is a critical time for the brain to replay and rehearse activities that you've learned through the day, as shown by classic experiments from the 1990s.
Scientists had a rodent run in a maze, a sort of a stereotypical, rat runs in a maze in the lab, and record from the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's concerned with spatial navigation, keeping track of where you're going in space. And what they found was that different brain cells gave off little spikes of electrical activity as the rat ran around this maze.
That's Dr. Daniel Rubin, a neurologist at Massachusetts General Hospital and an instructor at Harvard Medical School. He says these early studies revealed the connection between the hippocampus and spatial awareness. But that wasn't the most surprising finding. The unexpected discovery appeared as the scientists continued recording the hippocampus activity during sleep.
The brain cells, the neurons, would continue to give off these little spikes of electrical activity in the same order as they did when the rodent was running the maze. So it seemed to be rehearsing or replaying that same sequence. And then sure enough, if they put the rodent back in the maze, it would run the maze faster the next time. It had learned the correct route.
Which Rubin says fit the traditional theory of how humans learn new tasks. Various animal studies have shown that the hippocampus is closely tied with memory. But Rubin says scientists don't know if this part of the brain is the only link to memory. However, this particular mystery needed to be solved in order to progress an ongoing clinical trial by BrainGate. This organization is a comprehensive research team that brings together various disciplines, including neurologists, engineers, mathematicians, and more.
And we're all working together for the development of what we call a novel neurotechnology that is aimed at maintaining and restoring communication and functional independence for people with paralysis. And so this particular technology works by reading out neural activity from cerebral cortex. That's the part of the brain that controls our thoughts, intentions, memories, movements, and decoding it in real time to allow someone with weakness or paralysis, for example, from a spinal cord injury or a neurodegenerative condition like ALS, where people lose the ability to move over time, allowing them to continue to control their environment, to control computers for communication, to control other devices to help them throughout the day.
A big part of creating this technology is understanding how the brain operates and communicates. In order to translate information from the cerebral cortex into a usable signal for the technology, Rubin says they first need to understand the language of the cerebral cortex.
You can imagine if you were to find a computer from another universe and you wanted to figure out what was going on in the computer, you would have to decode, you have to understand what the signals are. And so to some extent, that's what all of neuroscience is doing, and that's what we're doing in particular as part of this trial.
But before scientists can decode the language, they first studied how the brain stores information about newly learned movements. Rubin says this research has never been done before. In the study recently published in the Journal of Neuroscience, Rubin placed sensors over a paralyzed participant's motor cortex to see if any replay occurs in this section of the brain during sleep.
We saw that new sequences that he practiced throughout the day were replayed throughout the night. And in fact, were replayed in such high fidelity that we could actually read them out in real time.
These findings suggest that learning and memories can occur in other parts of the brain outside of the hippocampus.
One can learn new motor skills. You can learn how to play the piano, you can learn how to shoot a basketball, and in general, if you keep practicing, you'll get better over time. But it wasn't really known, and we still don't really know where specifically in the brain that kind of learning happens. And so our finding that there's this same mechanism of replay and rehearsal overnight in motor cortex suggests that some of that learning actually happens right there. The other big area that I'm most interested in is how we can use this finding to help make this technology work better. So again, right now, the goal of this technology is to really read out someone's intended movements or actions and use that to help them control technology.
Rubin's goal for this technology is to be able to read a paralyzed person's intended movements. The better that scientists can understand this language, the more precision patients will have over the communication technology.
One of our big goals is to give someone who has lost the ability to, let's say, speak, to use this sort of technology to read out the movements or words that they were going to try to say by listening to the brain cells that would otherwise control the movement of their mouth, face, jaws, things like that.
And while they don't know how to decode the brain's information just yet, Rubin says this recent study brings them one step closer.
If we were to do this sort of recording and were to listen into the brain cells as someone tried to learn how to say something new for the first time, some series of phrases they hadn't said before, and are encoding new skills and new memories, then we might be able to read those out more precisely and use that as a way of restoring communication. And so it wouldn't be knowing what you're trying to say so much as knowing what muscles you're trying to move to say it.
Meaning that even if someone is paralyzed, their neurons still work normally. The message just can't reach their limbs.
So they're still firing their same sequence of electrical potentials to generate what my muscles otherwise would have done all at the same time to talk. And so if we can listen into that, we can begin to decode much more quickly what someone's trying to say. So instead of communicating one letter at a time, for example, by using eye gaze technology, which is sort of the standard commercial way by which someone with paralysis might communicate, we could instead use this technology, and instead of going letter by letter, have the computer read out word by word the words that they're trying to say.
Which sounds incredible. But how long will it be before we have this technology?
So we're getting at, 18 years of research so far. And I think if you would have asked us 5 years ago, we might have said, whoa, this is still on the horizon. But really, between the breakthroughs that have occurred in neuroscience, so over the past 5 years, our understanding of how the brain encodes information, combined with a simultaneous explosion in techniques in machine learning and computer processing power, multi-core chips and GPUs, along with all of these artificial intelligence algorithms, have really accelerated the progress of research to the degree where I think that this, may have, and I have to be careful and choose my words here because this is an ongoing clinical trial, but I'm very hopeful that within the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be something that's going to be able to help a lot of people.
You can find more information about Dr. Daniel Rubin and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
The people who are making decisions about our health and our public health system and how we deal with alcohol and measles and school shootings are politicians.
How one expert believes voting can make America healthier.
Then how ordinary people became the world's first paramedics.
History showed that nobody wanted to do this job. So you are not going to get professionals to sort of come down off their lofty perch to do this other thing.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal. I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
They very much wanted to fight for their country and to defeat the Nazis and help win the war. But at the same time, they had to fight just for the right to serve in the military.
Covering the stories of some 1 million African Americans that served in World War II. Then,
you're seeing companies that offer more freedom and more flexibility and more remote work for their employees. They are seeing better retention.
Taking a look at the post-pandemic work landscape. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.